Hey chess fans, this is JD back with another game from the ChessGoals repertoire. I'm checking out this game today from Dean Hergot. Through transposition, we arrived at this position, which is straight out of our repertoire, and of course we take the pawn, and we're going to try to hang on to it. Now there's a specific line that white can go down that's going to get them the pawn back, and it goes a4. We go bishop b4. We want to play b5. This pins the knight so that we can play that. e3, and we do go b5. They go bishop to d2. The point is he's breaking the pin. And we play a clever move here that I like. We play a5, and this is so that later, after b3, we're going to be able to push past and get connected past pawns here, and that's going to be sort of the highlight of this game and how it goes. So a takes, pawn. We have to do this in-between move first, otherwise we hang the pawn. So we takes, and then b3, bishop b7, also an important move. It's kind of worth memorizing a lot of this sequence because we had to play bishop out, not because we want to take the knight or defend this square or this square, which is all great things, but we need to defend the rook. Otherwise, when we played b4 later, the bishop would take and it's pinned. So b takes, and we don't take back, but push, which is the point of bishop b7. And we've got these connected outside pass pawns versus this pretty strong white center. And this game is interesting because it features both queenside pushes and also center counterplay. So we have bishop to b2, getting back out of the way, knight f6, controlling this square and this square. We're trying to really hold back these pawns the best we can. Bishop to d3 and knight d7. Simple development. We don't want to block in our own bishop. Besides, we want to definitely try to control the e5 and the c5 square, which will become important later on. We have castles, castles, and queen c2, which is the first move that leaves the repertoire that's not covered by us. So we're going to look at how black handled this position that's very similar to something that we covered, but not identical. Queen c7. Again, we're really taking control and looking at this c5 and the e5 square. And our idea is white seems to be gunning up to try to make something like e4, e5. And we want to be able to meet e4 with e5, which is a big point here. So we go rook fe1, and just to further prove our point, we go rook fe8. Again, just preparing this move. So here, white opts for something other than e4, because I think they see what the problem is. So after something like this, we go e5, and this is our key idea. We're not going to allow him to play e5 himself, and we're trying to weaken both of these squares, especially knight c5. So if he takes, we can simply play knight g4, and we're going to get our pawn back. We're going to have a blockade on e5 and c5. Or if he plays d5, it's probably even worse. At least it feels worse to me. We get knight c5, and we have fantastic blockade on the dark squares. And these pawns are going to be really well supported to go up the board. So opting out of that, white chooses to play e5, which looks like it's going to win a pawn. Well, I mean, it just does win a pawn, but at a pretty heavy cost. So we play knight takes, and they go pawn takes, and we go knight to d7. We're not trying to go out to g4 and hope to come back and take the pawn. We're headed straight for c5, which is what this big hole is left behind. He takes, and we've given up a clean pawn, but what do we have in return? We've shattered the white center. We still have this great bishop, and we're going to have lots of mobility with these pawns, and the white structure doesn't have much mobility at all. It's going to take quite some time for him to move anything. So of course, knight c5 immediately. Bishop to d4, he wants to trade that off. That's okay. It's time to move the pawns. And this is thanks to some clever tactics here. So he plays bishop takes, queen takes, and then f4. I mean, why f4? Why not, of course, rook takes? This makes sense. We take back, and we just lost a pawn. But overlooks that we still have this really nice bishop, and we have a nice fork. Queen c6. He's going to lose the rook or get himself mated. So he plays f4, trying to alleviate that. But we just play rook e8. This brings the rook back to an open file where it needs to be. We're clearly not going to play e5 over here anymore. And again, creating a problem. You can't take this because we take, you take, and thank you, we win the bishop. So he plays queen to e2, which is a clever, I guess it's a clever move. It has some ideas. It, of course, continues to defend the bishop, allows the bishop to move, so it's not pressure from the rook, but also this sort of annoying move is threatened too. So we played g6 to block that, bishop to b1, trying to get out of the way, maybe going to come across to c2, but not wanting to be in the eye of this rook so that the queen is free to move. b3, and then h4. Well, the idea is, of course, to play h5, and queen to b4. Queen to b4 is a good move. If we just try to sort of blatantly just rush the pawns down, place them in like a3, we're still doing okay. We're actually still quite a bit better here, but you've really got to be careful. One easy way to lose would be something like h5, and if you just try to go in and win the bishop, then he just takes. If we can even make a queen, and we just get ourselves checkmated quickly. So we don't have to be in such a big hurry to push. We do have control of this file, and we have control of this diagonal, and so queen b4, which threatens rook to d2, and some connection here on g2. And it's really difficult for white to handle this. Chooses to try to trade off rooks, the idea being that if he plays h5 now, it's just immediately lost. There's nowhere good for the queen to go after this. We're just going to win it. And even if he wants to try to move the queen somewhere, it's difficult to move the queen into a better attacking position because the rook is going to hang. So this way, and of course we take, and bring the queen in to further support these pawns up the board. Once we're ready to play excuse me, once we're ready to play here and then advance, it's pretty well lights out. So white does one nice trick. He plays rook takes a4, and it's nice because we can't take it, because if we take here, we get this, and this is just a draw. We're never going to be able to escape the checks. On and on and on and on forever. We're checks for all the time. So instead, after rook takes a4, we get queen takes e3, check. Queen takes here, check. And now we can take the rook. And the point is that we're guarding this f6 square, and there's no chances. There's a nice little flourish at the end, just takes, and then takes back here. But down the rook, we're going to definitely win back our material with no questions. Something like this is probably about to happen, and it's having a hard time seeing how white's not going to get mated almost immediately. But going back, understanding that this idea of the queen coming to c7 and this knight on d7, and their point being of controlling this e5 and the c5 square, with this idea of e5 hitting against the structure when white has played e4. This is an important idea and something that I hope that you get to use in your games. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.